first question is really on the way that style has been used in contemporary culture as a commodity form, and the way that people are in many ways integrated into the culture through the use of style. Some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I think from the outset that one of the things that needs to be said, precisely because the world of style sort of claims to be that that's all there is. When I tend to think about style, my impulse is to try and connect this world of image and this world of pure representation to sort of other aspects of the society in which it exists. In other words, my instinct is to assume about any society that the way in which images operate is connected to the way in which people live within that society. And I think that there's probably no way of understanding the power of sort of disembodied image and representation as part of the aesthetic system and sort of the structure of desire within contemporary culture without beginning with the question of money. And that is to say that this is a society in which at sort of its bedrock, the system of value itself, economic value, is predicated on disembodied representation. In other words, built into the dollar. The economic system itself, the sort of bedrock of contemporary life, the market, is predicated increasingly on this sort of idea of disembodied representation. Money, credit, stuff like that, all sort of has implicit within it the idea that what is truly of value is not the thing, but is the representation of the thing. And in the United States, for example, during the decade where more and more people were saying style is everything and sort of substance is getting lost, on the economic level, the very structure of the economy was moving from a situation in which the symbolic economy, the economy of credit and junk bonds and all of this kind of stuff, was sort of exponentially growing in importance at a time where that sort of economic base predicated in manufacturing or in agriculture was going down the tubes. And the result of that is not only that the sort of basic system of economic value within the society was built on representations of value, but then more and more people's jobs were involved. More and more the kind of work that people do is involved in negotiating with symbols. Whether it's working in advertising or other promotional industries, or whether it's working in banking or stocks and bonds or insurance or all of that kind of stuff. And so, in order to understand perhaps why sort of this idea of pure style is so alluring, I would begin by saying that we live within a world today where pure representation at many different levels within the society has come to be the sort of imprimatur of truth. Okay. Within the framework of a society where the play of symbols, stands at the heart of economic life, the play of symbols has come to affect more and more aspects of people's everyday lives, and I think that's really where we come to the question of style and sort of this overemphasis or this, forget putting even a evaluative judgment, this enormous emphasis on questions of image and self-presentation and so on. There are sort of various things at play. One of the realities with which we live is that we live in a consumer society, a society where the basic measure of economic health in the market is the ability to have people using up and disposing of what they have and replacing it with something new. And one of the basic ways in which the market has built the premise of disposability into it is through the use of style. And so this kind of transformation of everything into style, up to and including life itself, people talk about the lives they live as lifestyles, is a sign of the way in which sort of the inner fabric of existence has become more and more affected by a world in which the flutter of images replacing images, has come to sort of dominate sort of economic life, the life of the market, etc. So I think that's one aspect of it, other than sort of accepting style on its own terms. I would say that the prevalence of style and the prevalence of image is to some extent rooted in the bedrock of an economy based on representational value, and is to some extent also predicated on a market which depends in fact on the constant circulation and displacement of goods with other and new goods. And one of the basic ways in which that takes place is through the process of style. It began really in the fashion industries. By the 1920s, that tendency of changing fashions, it was being applied to all different kinds of goods.
In the car industry.
The car industry was the next to pick it up, but bathroom scales and appliances and all kinds of stuff, even labelings on cans, corporate logos, and so on. The results of that, I mean, I think are sort of manyfold. One of which is that people live in an environment where, because changing style is so much a part of the way in which they situate themselves, and I think Hollywood has had a lot to do with this, where image and style have become increasingly the lens through which people understand a lot of social and historical processes. Obviously, on the most basic level, people make judgments about themselves and each other on the basis of style. There's a lot to do, particularly with living in an urban environment, where sort of interactions between strangers are very common, and where sort of the ability to make judgments on the basis of what one sees, right, is a part of surviving within that kind of an environment.
Isn't there like a positive aspect to the style, that people use style as a resource to make themselves, to invent themselves?
I think that there's no question, and it's one of the reasons why it's in stuff I talked about today in the lecture. It's too simple to kind of view the image, merely as this sort of virus which is running through the society. Imagery is historically, and I'm really prehistorically, one of the fundamental resources by which people have articulated themselves and articulated their world, and I think that continues to be true. I do think, however, that within a society where sort of style has become essentially this fundamental currency of existence, and where to a large extent people's access to style comes through the marketplace and is in certain ways tied into the sort of engines of disposability, that each one of us, in sort of employing style as a sort of voice of self-expression, also is caught sort of between that sort of desire and instinct towards self-expression and sort of self-actualization, collectively or individually. And in fact living in a world where one's sort of stylistic identity has become a very important part of being able to function in that world. When I ask my students what is the sort of primary thing that they think about in going to a job interview, the immediate thing that they start talking about is the way that they would dress. That there is a recognition, and I think this becomes accentuated in a service economy, that self-presentation is not merely just you speaking for yourself, but it's a job category. Whereas 100 years ago, sort of technical skills or mechanical skills or agricultural skills were these sort of fundamental aspects of what it meant to be a creative person or a productive person or an employable person. Today, self-presentation in a lot of areas has become one of the most basic aspects of what it means to be employable, to be a sort of viable person within sort of the social and economic marketplace. And so all I'm saying is that I think that people are very much pulled between the idea that through image they can in fact say things about themselves, even raise questions about their world on an imagistic level, and also the recognition that the kind of fixation on the play of images is not something that's totally in their control, and that to a large extent is fired by other aspects of the society, the economic structure, the system of disposability, the nature of work in a service society, and so forth.